So, hello everybody, and once my cat decides to move, I can actually show you what I'm going to be discussing today. Today I'm going to be discussing two books from 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons, the Forgotten Realms Campaign Guide, and the Neverwinter campaign setting, also from 4th edition. These two books are of course completely out of date today. 4th edition is no more. We will also not be using 4th edition rules, but we will be playing Dungeons & Dragons, yes, who would have thought, and we are going to be using the 5th edition rules, obviously, because that's the rule set that is out there. 4th edition I never had an issue with. I even have 4th edition rulebooks at home. The problem was that the people that I was role-playing with didn't want to play 4th edition, and I understand why. Like I said, have to say that I never had any issues with 4th edition. And I liked certain aspects about it because it also took D&D back to where it originally came from, namely a game that's heavily centered around tactical combat and miniatures, and it's in a way still the case in Midgard to this day. So, but what I'm now telling you is that I will be playing Dungeons & Dragons on my channel. However, first of all, it will be in German, and secondly, it will be patrons only. But nevertheless, I do want to do a review of these two books. Why am I reading them? Well, in order to get the game started, what we're going to be playing is Lost Mine of Phandelver. Now, Lost Mine of Phandelver is, for those of you who don't know, part of the starter box. I've only got the PDFs because I don't really need a box, I don't really need dice, I don't really need anything like it. So I got the PDFs and I printed them off. So this is the how to play part. So this is basically the basic rule set, and there is something in there that doesn't even belong there. So this is the basic rule set of of D&D 5th edition as you get it with the starter set. It comprises of pretty much 30 odd pages. It contains all the spells that you need. It contains information on how to run a game. It contains information on how to run combat, of course, how much stuff costs, how armor works, etc., etc. And then you've got the Lost Mine of Phandelver proper, and that is 64 plus pages, including an index. I mean, this is really, really good. You have all of the stat blocks. And when I said, okay, we're going to play this, I'm going to be playing with a D&D veteran who's been playing D&D for a very long time in the 5th edition. And has played pretty much an ongoing campaign for several years at this stage. Then I've got a player who's never played D&D, and then I have someone who has played D&D and who is very well versed in its lore. So, and I have played D&D on and off since the 80s. In the beginning I played it as a tabletop, then I moved on to the computer games for AD&D, and then I didn't play 3.5, but I did play Pathfinder, which of course arguably is 3.51, first edition only, and then we moved straight into 5th edition, and then we played some Tiamat, and we played Ravenloft. And Ravenloft took us a very long time. Okay, so I said, okay, we just came up with the idea that we wanted to play something different. We didn't want to play DSA only. I mean, we're not only playing DSA, but there was a lot of DSA going on. And we just felt we wanted something different. I said, well, you know, if you guys want something different, I'm happy to run Lost Mines of Phandelver, or Lost Mine of Phandelver. But you have to get, you know, like the rule book, at least the player's handbook, because, you know, otherwise it's going to be a bit difficult. So, and then I downloaded this, I bought it, I downloaded it, I printed it off, and then I realized that this Lost Mine of Phandelver is actually not a beginner's adventure. like a traditional beginner's adventure. It's a sandbox, and it is a brilliant one. I have to say that when I read this, I wanted to get started immediately. But I'm not going to talk about Lost Mine of Phandelver today. I'm going to do this once we've played it, which is going to take us a long time knowing my group. But I just want to say this is what we're planning on doing. And that brought me here. Neverwinter. Because, of course, Phandalin and the Lost Mine are south of Neverwinter. And in the story of the Lost Mine of Phandelver, you can actually have a story hook where the heroes set out in Neverwinter and travel south to Phandalin and then start investigating. And then the whole Mine of Phandelver story evolves. And this book, I mean, there is some, I don't know if there's any information about Neverwinter in this, actually. It is mentioned, but, you know, it's a really kept brief. And they also say you don't need the Forgotten Realms campaign setting. You don't need to know anything about it. You can play this out of the box. And that is true. You can. Now, I saw this book a long time ago when it was out for 4th edition. And I just fell in love with this picture. I mean, this picture is so evocative. This bridge, this tower, these ruins, and then this black dragon lich, possibly, sitting there with its gaping maw and threatening the reader. And I just thought that this was such a brilliant image. But I never bought the book, because why would I? So now, a couple of months ago, when it became clear that we were going to do D&D, and also for a different campaign that I'm running in a completely different system, where you have a multiverse, where only one plane or planet is actually described, I said, okay, well, if I'm going to do multiverse with this player, then I need other worlds that I can send them to. And of course, which other plane would you send somebody to? Of course, Dark Sun. So I got my 4th edition Dark Sun stuff. I got AD&D Dark Sun stuff off of Dungeon Masters Guild. And then I basically said, okay, since I'm ordering anyway, and since ordering from the UK is now a lot more expensive because you have to pay tariffs, you can either order it for a normal shipping cost, which is $18.72, or you order it for $18.99, and then you don't have to pay any tariffs. So I don't know what the 17 cents or 27 cents difference means, but it doesn't make any difference. So I basically filled my cart with print-on-demand goodness. And yes, these books are all print-on-demand, and the quality is outstanding. They get printed in the UK in a place called Milton Keynes, and they're just brilliant. I mean, the quality is top-notch. They are full color. You can also sometimes get a black and white version. It depends. I don't know if you can get a black and white version of these ones, but, you know, it's, you know, they're not really expensive either. And they're hardcover, and they're really beautiful. So what do you get when you get the Neverwinter campaign setting? Well, not surprisingly, this is Neverwinter. First, it explains to you what Neverwinter is. It tells you a little bit about its history, Jewel of the North, you know, Spell Plague, Cataclysm, and where we're at now. So in 4th edition, at this stage, the Cataclysm has happened. The Lord Protector Neverember and his generals Sabine have come to the city to rescue it, or whatever you want to call it, maybe invade it, maybe he's about to establish a military dictatorship. I think it kind of depends a little bit on who you talk to and who you are, because as always, when there is a crisis, there are those that suffer and there are those that come out as the winners. And so now Neverwinter is destroyed in parts. The southeastern quadrant has this huge chasm which takes you to the Underdark if you fall into it, and from it ooze, on the one hand, still spell plague, scarred or corrupted enemies. It also exudes, as far as I can tell, spell plague in some shape or form. And it actually says somewhere in the book that you can contract it, and when you contract it, it kind of manifests itself like radiation sickness, and then you get really sick. And if you're really, really unlucky and somebody finds out that you have spell plague. Lord Protector Neverember will send you to Helmshold, which is a place about 30 km south of Neverwinter where there is a sanatorium for people like you. It also gives you the possibility of creating Neverwinter-based characters, like a Neverwinter noble or an Ogmar's faithful. Now, Ogmar is a god that is revered. They're a Harper agent, a dead rat deserter, an Ilan guardian. Ilan is a type of elf. Pack outcast. I think these are the Grey Wolf tribal barbarians, and I believe that they are actually lycanthropes. Spellscarred Harbinger, so you can also have play a character that's Spellscarred, that has contracted spell plague. Then for the war priests you have different domains, Coprelon, Ogmar, Selune, Torm. And for the wizard you have the Blade Singer. That's, I believe, even a different type of class. Then you have factions and foes, New Neverwinter, Abolithic Sovereignty, Ashmadai, Thayans, Netherese, and so on. They explain to you who actually still lives in Neverwinter, what groupings there are, and what their what their aims are if you want to play a political game. Now, I have the problem with political games, and I like playing them, but I'm very bad at conceiving them. So I always find that really difficult. But anyway, you can use this, and if you do want this, you get pretty much 50 odd pages of information about this. And then you have the Gazetteer, which is chapter 4, which describes Neverwinter and its environs. So you have Neverwinter, the different, the 4 different quadrants, who lives where. It describes the Protector's Enclave, which is in the southwestern quadrant. Then you've got the floating islands that basically dot the landscape. The Black Lake District, River District, the Chasm itself, Underground Neverwinter, Castle Never, Helmshold, which is the sanitarium where the prophetess lives. Neverwinter Wood, very interesting for various reasons, because you also have basically a fallen city, which I believe the Netherese or the Thanes, I forget, try to bring back. You have Mount Hote now, of course, the one that exploded and erupted and basically led to the cataclysm as well. You have Thunder Tree. Interestingly enough, Thunder Tree also appears in the Lost Mine of Phandelver, so you have like a connection there. The Dread Ring, which is a part of Neverwinter Wood. Then you've got Gauntlgrim and you've got Evernight. So all kinds of places are described and they are extremely well described. I mean, first of all, the writing is extremely good. I really enjoyed reading this. You can sit down with this book and just read it, and you will not for 1 second go, oh my god, this is boring. When is the end? There is some art in there. The art is good. Of course, art is the most expensive part of these books, I'm told, so there is not that much. But it gives you what you want. It gives you impressions. It's evocative. And yeah, I mean, a mind flayer sits down to dinner. I mean, this picture says it all. The poor drow, he's dead. The book itself is of really high quality, and the binding is super. Also, the way it's printed, you've got like the on the side here, you always see where you are, because it says Thay through the veil. So if you really are looking for something really quickly, you can just do this and then see, okay, this is the Chasm, Helmshold. They also have this little detail here at the bottom corner where they have the page numbering in it. And so basically I've read this, and it's given me 1 gazillion ideas of what we could be doing in Neverwinter. Of course, we want to play Lost Mine of Phandelver, so we have to leave Neverwinter at some point. But at least it's given me an idea of how I can put the group into Neverwinter. It's a very interesting group. We've got one tiefling, one half-orc, and one dragonborn. A dragonborn paladin, a half-orc bard, and a tiefling sorcerer. It's going to be fun. But of course, Neverwinter is only one city on the Sword Coast. And here we've got the Forgotten Realms campaign guide. Of course, the Forgotten Realms, 4th edition, and even beyond and before, is much larger than just the Sword Coast. But I haven't got a Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide for 4th edition. I've got the one for 5th edition as a PDF, which I'm going to print off as well. But so this book, why should you read it? Well, I think you should read it because, first of all, it starts out with an adventure. Loudwater, very nice. I haven't read this because I didn't want to basically read the adventure first before I started reading the whole book. So basically, it explains to you what traveling in Faerun in 1479 DR is like. It tells you about magic, what the spell plague is, what it did, fantastic features, magic items, rituals, cosmology, the astral sea. So it basically explains to you what Toril is, in which Faerun is situated, what Abir is, which is its twin world kind of that was sundered, but then as a result of the spell plague has kind of overlapped with it and come closer. You have the Pantheon, you have, well, basically the greater gods, the exarchs, the primordials, the archdevils, pantheons of the world. And then you have Faerun and beyond, so basically a description of places in Faerun. So Baldur's Gate, they give it 2 pages. Neverwinter isn't even mentioned in here because obviously you have your own campaign guide for that. Luskan, Many Arrows, Eastdrift, Waterdeep is down here, 6 pages. Then Returned Abir, Chult, etc. So these are all, and the Underdark, of course. Then, of course, Threats, the Church of Bane, the Church of Shard, the Court of Roran. So basically everything you need, a description of the places. So down here we've got Kalim Shan, and it basically explains to you the lore, what settlements there are, and things you can do if you want to go there, things that you can put your people through. So, for example, here we've got plots and adventure sites in Chesenta. So this is a book that you can use to run a campaign in the Forgotten Realms. Of course, when you look at this book, it deals with all of the Forgotten Realms on 300 pages, 287. Here you've got Neverwinter, which is dealt with on 222. So essentially, of course, this will only ever scratch the surface, but that's all that I really need. Because I can take this, even the scratched surface, and then rub at it some more, and then use my own paints and go, okay, well, what do I want my guys to do? What do they want to do? Where could we do this? And then just find the right place, or even take these ideas and transpose them and say, well, you know, there is a place that I find really interesting, but it's way too far away from where they are. Going there will take them ages. So how about transposing it? Because when we play, we will not be following the law, because of course Lost Mine of Phandelver is set 100 years in the future from, is it 100 years? Does it say when it's set? More than 500 years ago? No, that's not it. It's anyway a long time after the chasm was first formed, because at this stage the chasm has been closed and sealed by magic. So this is in the future. So obviously this is not compatible, as it were, if you go strictly by timeline. But I don't care. I think the spell plague and all its possibilities are way too big and too good a storyline to give up. Because you can even bring this into Lost Battle of Phandelver, who cares? So what we will be doing is we will be playing pretty much our own thing and our own story, but using the 4th edition version, as it were, of the Forgotten Realms, plus then putting in stuff, maybe even from AD&D, that I find interesting, because I'm also getting a couple of AD&D things about the Forgotten Realms. And yeah, so basically I'm showcasing these 2 books because I really like them. I'm also showcasing them because you can get them quite easily. Like I said, they're print on demand on Dungeon Masters Guild. And sometimes people wonder, what quality do you actually get when you buy print on demand? And I have to say, okay, it's non-gloss paper. Whereas here we've got the player's handbook. And of course, and I think this is glossy paper, isn't it? Well, yeah, it's different paper anyway. But that aside, the quality is super. And I really, really love the fact that they're doing this, because there are other companies that, where you would really, really love to get the old stuff in book form. Some of them have them at least as PDFs, and you can buy them and print them off, although that's never as good. And some people simply don't have the old PDFs available anymore. And this idea of saying, okay, can you not put them out as print on demand? Because I really prefer paying 40 quid for a book like this than having to print off 222 pages and then bind them. And then, you have like these bound volumes. Or even say, well, if you buy in bulk, then of course it would get cheaper and stuff. And with the most recent purchases that I made from Dungeon Masters Guild, I also got the PDFs for free, which is super. So, I really, really like that they're doing this, and this is also why I'm supporting this, because if people buy it, then the publishers will have an incentive to put it out there, number one. And number two, all discussions about the merits and flaws and differences of opinion about different editions aside, I believe that the stories that you can tell, even just using these 2 books, can keep you going for years. If you have a group that doesn't stick by canon, that doesn't say, yeah, but in 5th edition, blah, 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 but where you just want to do the storytelling, these books are still relevant. So that's all from me. Dungeons & Dragons Forgotten Realms Campaign Guide 4th edition and Dungeons & Dragons Neverwinter Campaign Setting 4th edition, both available through Dungeon Masters Guild as hardcover books. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.